So, Councillor Sewards, in that case.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Before I begin, I do want to say that it is a shame that the Conservatives have not taken this opportunity to apologise for their many errors that have led to this latest crisis. The right thing to do following a huge mistake is to admit it frankly, apologise for it and rectify it. By submitting their amendment today, it's quite clear that they are not willing to own up to their catastrophic error on crumbly concrete in our schools. In fact, their Education Minister would even like the public to thank them for it. They were just given the opportunity to apologise in this chamber. They didn't take it. So given that they failed on those first two tests, do we really trust them to pass the third and rectify the damage that they have caused? Perhaps not. As a teacher in a South Leeds school, I have to report that this is just the latest in a long line of preventable crises inflicted on our young people by this government. For schools alone, we've already had the recruitment crisis, the retention crisis, the crisis in SEND funding, and now this concrete crisis. When will it end? Well, I'll tell you when it started, because Councillor Stevenson isn't the only one who can give history lessons. Cast your minds back to 2010. The Conservatives and Liberal Democrats had just entered power. On the 5th of July that year, they cancelled the previous Labour government's Building Schools for the Future programme. It was a decision one judge described as so unfair as to amount to an abuse of power. What was the Conservatives' policy response to this? Historically low capital spending on school buildings. Not my words, but the words of the IFS. And it gets worse. On school maintenance, the National Audit Office say that the government's own figures say they needed £5.3 billion per year between 2021 and 25 just to maintain and mitigate the worst and most serious risks in our schools. Now, just consider that for a moment. More than £5 billion needed to mitigate the most serious risks. Did the government give them that? No. They gave them 40% less than the absolute bare minimum, and all because the Chancellor at the time, Rishi Sunak, refused to spend money to keep our buildings and our schools safe. But you know what gets me the most is that it didn't have to be this way. Yes, as a teacher, I've witnessed firsthand the damage that has been done and inflicted on our education system, and I live with that every day. But I also had the good fortune to grow up and go to school, Morley High School, under the last Labour government. My generation saw schools rebuilt. We reaped the rewards of a properly funded education system. Opportunities were made available to people just like me, millions of people just like me, to make the best of ourselves. And over the last 13 years, what did we get? We saw those opportunities ebb away. Education funding cut to the bone, and now schools are on the brink of collapse. Children in Leeds deserve better than this. My ward of Farnley and Wortley is about to join a new constituency of Leeds South West and Morley, and we'll be joining our friends in Morley and Ardsley and Robin Hood. And of course these areas are represented by Dame Andrea Jenkins at the moment, and I do have to ask, I must ask, are these communities best served by a Conservative MP who refuses to account for the actions of her government? Are these communities best served by a Conservative MP who had nothing to say on RAC, nothing to say when a school in her own constituency was found to contain this concrete? The situation is not unique, though. We have a government made up of Conservative MPs with no ideas, no credibility and no solutions to the problems that they themselves have caused. They should go back to the British people and they should ask them what they think of their performance. Until they do, we call on them to fund schools properly. Lord Mayor, I second the White Paper.